time, Qatar has released the 8 Navy veterans who were sentenced to death on alleged espionage charges. 7 of them have already returned to India. New Delhi's diplomatic intervention led to the communication of the capital punishment to an extended prison term earlier. The veterans including Captain Navjeet Gill and Saurabh Vashisht, commanders Purendru Tiwari, Amit Nagpal, S.K. Gupta, P.K. Verma, Sugunakar Pakala and sailor Ragesh were detained in August of 2022 on undisclosed charges. Meanwhile, joining us at this point of time is Mr. K.P. Fabian, former Indian Foreign Secretary. Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for speaking to us on NewsX. Now, of course, this is it's a triumph as far as our diplomatic relations are concerned. What would you like to say about this, sir?
Good morning. Thank you. Former Indian Ambassador to Qatar. Okay. Now, this is a very significant victory for Indian diplomacy. And we should all rejoice, not only the families, but all of us. But at the same time, as we rejoice, we should make an in-depth study of what happened. And I am confident that the Ministry of External Affairs would have already started that study. I am not suggesting that it should be published in total. But a couple of points. One is that it is a Court of Cassation which has given the verdict. Now, there is a difference between the Court of Cassation, which has a French background, established in 1790 or 91 at the time of the French Revolution, and the British system of Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in India, for example, can go into facts of the case and the legality, whereas the Court of Cassation doesn't go into the facts of the case. It only looks at the legality and also including whether there has been any error of procedure. Now, my view is that our personnel are innocent. It is not the case that they were found guilty and have been pardoned by the Amir. No, they are innocent. Then arises a question, why did the prosecution in Qatar do what it did? So this has to be looked into. Second, our naval attaché had come back to India when this whole thing started. That was about 18 months ago. Now, let us hope that he will go back and the naval cooperation between India and Qatar will resume. Third thing is that, is it the case that there was a third country which was not pleased with the developing naval cooperation between India and Qatar and therefore wanted to do something to frustrate it? So these are all questions which have to be addressed, and as I said, it will be done by Ministry of External Affairs. And another thing is that I also want to congratulate the government of the state of Qatar, because the Qatar judicial system has delivered justice. And of course, at the highest level. But we should appreciate that. And last point is that some of our commentators earlier had said that we should approach the United States to put pressure on Qatar and all that. Now, this is something which I had all along resisted, saying that it is best to deal with it bilaterally, not involving anyone else.
Right, so absolutely. It was a very sudden release. I mean, what do you think would have persuaded Qatar authorities and judiciary to release the veterans?
Well, I should imagine that there was the law was wrongly applied, but apart from that, I should also imagine that the prestige which India has and the good relations which India has maintained with the Gulf countries, and also, Qatar must be noticing very carefully what is happening, because India, the Prime Minister is going to UAE, and between UAE and Qatar there is a certain, what shall I call it, slight rivalry, and they are neighbors, and Qatar must be must have taken note of the fact that it is important to keep good relations with India. So, and also you might notice that very recently we renewed a long-term LNG contract with them. So Qatar has acted in its own interest. Qatar has acted with diplomatic maturity, and we all should be glad about it.
Right, sir. You know, the veterans have been absolved of all charges against them. Who do you think might have been involved in the conspiracy targeting Indian veterans?
We do not know, but there was a speculation that Pakistan personnel working in Qatar might have misled the prosecution. It is possible. But I want to make one more point. These veterans deserve compensation for having been kept in prison for 18 months. Now, it will not be diplomatically correct to seek that compensation from Qatar. Therefore, let us expect that government of India will take care of that part of it.
Right, so, you know, this is being looked at as a diplomatic victory for India. How do you think this was made possible?
As I said, you know, I had always said right from the beginning that the Amir of Qatar, who is 40 plus, he would not have permitted the execution. That was for sure. In fact, he himself was put in a very embarrassing situation when the prosecution started. But basically, the system of justice in Qatar has delivered, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility that the government of Qatar also would have recognized that there was something wrong with the whole procedure and that it was necessary to correct it as early as possible.
Right, so absolutely justice has been delivered, but what does this say about India-Qatar ties?
I expect India-Qatar ties to be restored to its in full measure. And as I said earlier, it is important that our naval attaché goes back as early as possible.
Must the government of India look into the matter and find out who was behind this conspiracy?
Yes, that's what I said. It is for External Affairs and others concerned to make an in-depth study as to why it happened, how it happened, why did the prosecutor in Qatar do what it did without proper evidence or without following the law. So all this has to be looked into, but as I said, and I repeat, it is not something to be publicized by MEA.
Right, sir, absolutely. In fact, I'd like to ask you my final question. Can we expect cooperation from Qatar to find out the real motive behind targeting Indian Navy veterans?
Well, cooperation may be, you know, may or may not be possible, but I'm sure that the embassy has other means of finding out. In other words, it will not be official cooperation. It can be found out otherwise by talking. And you know, when diplomats talk, sometimes they talk formally, sometimes they talk informally.
All right, Ambassador Fabian, for that, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your, in fact, those details with our viewers.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.